Okay, part 8. The book fair and the follow-up meeting. A great number of customers came to and made purchases from the book fair this year. The most notable attendee to all those present was no doubt my great-grandfather, who had been at the very front of the customer line. He had recovered since his collapse during my manic compression lecture, and to everyone's surprise, arrived with his caretakers. Upon tottering to the stand with his walking stick, he had bought one of every book. I heard Benno and the others inhale sharply at the sudden huge sum of money. There hadn't been many books when we had initially started the fair, but now there were a variety of types available. No other customer bought one of everything. Grandfather certainly is rich, isn't he, Riarda? He wanted to purchase one of each, considering that his descendants, you and Lady Elvira, published them, milady. He has only just recovered. Wait. So Count Lasgang was quite worried about him coming. Great-grandfather, you're pushing yourself way too hard. Isn't there a good chance you'll collapse again? I watched over him anxiously until he eventually left the room, all the while empathizing with those who had to watch over me in the same way. This is bad for my heart. No wonder everyone yells at me to keep calm. I need to search for the self-restraint I abandoned so long ago. As I passed the nerve-wracking time, newly baptized children came for cards and playing cards while adults came for books. There were many female customers, and our best-selling fiction book was the collection of romantic night stories Elvira had written. Once again, love stories set in the Royal Academy were proving popular. They were based on tales she had heard from women across many generations so that people of all ages could read them and enjoy both savoring their nostalgia and sharing theories on who a particular character was based on. Oh boy, but that's fun to figure out. But that said, the best-selling product came across all types was the star of this year's book fair, Rosemind's Ravishing Recipes. It was our first color book and the product of many people's labor. Hugo and Ella had selected their simplest, easy-to-make recipes, Nicola had done her best to write them all down, Wilma had drawn the art, and Heidi had created the color ink that made the coloring possible in the first place. Incidentally, the final page included an advertisement for the Italian restaurant. We were able to produce color books through mimeograph printing. It was exceedingly time-consuming and expensive compared to printing in black and white, and it was extremely hard to keep the overlapping colors from mixing together. Gil had informed me as such, slumped over in exhaustion at just the thought. The recipe book was slim, with only 10 recipes in total, but it was our most expensive book yet. Even so, because it included recipes for common consomme and pasta dishes, nobles who had eaten the meals prepared by the castle chefs over winter socializing bought it in droves. The cooking style was quite different from local traditions, so it was yet to be seen whether the chefs would actually be able to make proper dishes from the recipes alone. Ella and the others had said that one would still need to get used to balancing the heat and the timing and such. Of course, instructions to make natural yeast were not included, so the castle remained the only place where one could eat fluffy bread. I gotta talk right. We will return to the temple after breakfast tomorrow, Ferdinand said. The Planting Company will be there, but only for our meeting. Know that we will be returning to the castle by dinner. Understood. We had a meeting with the Planting Company scheduled in the orphanage director's chambers, where we were going to discuss what to print next and the upcoming Haldensdale visit. I was completely ready to meet Lutz and Benno again after so long. I had given them an official summons during the book fair and slipped a letter to my family in the list of things we'll be talking about. I would like to participate in the meeting as well, Hartman said to me. Please no. Hartman being there meant I would need to dress up my words, just as I had done when writing the letter. Was this just going to be my life now? And I was finally going to get to meet everyone again, too. Due to having brought him to the temple before, there was no reason for me to refuse him this time, but as I regretfully went to give him permission, Ferdinand shook his head with a frown. Thank God for that. There will be a meeting 2 days from now with the scholars recommended by the various Geebs. It is then that work for the printing industry will be officially distributed. The ops permission shall not be granted before then, so now is not the time for Feline or Hartman to come to the temple. Instead, I would advise them to prepare documents to be distributed to the scholars regarding the steps and materials necessary for building paper-making workshops and printing workshops, he said. As you wish. Ferdinand silenced any potential protests by giving my apprentice scholars work to do. I did feel a little bad for Hartman, but I was super relieved that I wouldn't have to bring him or Feline with me. So much so that I wanted to pray in thanks for Sylvester working so slowly that he hadn't given Ferdinand permission yet. Don't worry, I'm not actually praying, though I may be grinning a little. After breakfast the next day, I departed for the temple with Ferdinand, Daniel, and Angelica were going to accompany me as guards, while the underage knights remained behind as they had before. They will be spending this time participating in Bonaface's apprentice training. Good luck! Hurry back soon, Lady Rosamine. For their sakes, I am terribly worried about how excessively motivated Grandfather seems to be. The apprentices might even be worked to death, Cornelius said as he saw us off. His mental scars from his time being trained among the Archducal family's guard knights were evidently long from being forgotten. I really don't think my return will change Grandfather's inability to control himself. Upon arriving at the temple, Ferdinand went straight to the High Bishop's chambers and held a pre-meeting for our talk with the planting company, which was scheduled for fourth bell. I suppose this will have to do, Ferdinand said, once our preparatory discussion was over. Indeed, I replied, still writing down what he had said on my diptych. I imagine they will have many questions, concerns, and requests regarding the cleanup of the lower city, and the selection of scholars which will need to be settled through a meeting with the Ob. I will arrange that at once, Justice replied. He wasted no time getting to work. Now that our pre-meeting had concluded, Fran brought in tea and sweets. We were having crepes again since Daniel had tragically missed his chance before. Those crepes were especially fancy, with the Peru juice having been mixed into the batter. Oh, Daniel's gonna love that if he gets the chance. He gets to try it. Come on. Let him have it. Ferdinand didn't like his sweets to be too sweet, so his crepes had lots of rum toff and a conservative amount of cream. In contrast, mine had Peru chunks mixed in and extra cream. Juice from the Peru chunks filled my mouth with joy. It was a delicious winter flavor, but Perus were now out of season. This will be my last opportunity to enjoy them this year. More new sweets, Ferdinand observed. The crepes themselves have been around for quite some time. They're just made with slightly different ingredients, I replied. Once we were done, Ferdinand took out the sound-blocking magic tools. I groped one, and that was when I noticed his expression twist slightly with what looked like sympathy for me. Oh, I know why. This was actually mentioned in a previous volume by Benno and Mark, where they had to, they were discussing what they were going to have to do once they could no longer go into the hidden room, because that was going to end up popping up at some point, either when she turned 10 or when she became engaged. So there's going to be times where she can't even go in the hidden room with them anymore, which means she can't get her hugs from Lutz anymore. Oh, no! Mine. Scholars will henceforth accompany you to the temple, he said. This will be the last time you can use the hidden room here. I had known this day would come eventually, but his words hit me like a truck nonetheless. The presence of scholars meant I wouldn't be able to clear my chambers and bring only specific merchants into my hidden room. I was feeling the same sadness I had momentarily felt when Hartmut had asked to come. It was all over. Did you stop Hartmut from coming so that I could have time to say goodbye to Lutz and the others, I asked. I imagined it would be better for you to finalize matters yourself, rather than have everything so abruptly taken from you. Ferdinand lowered his eyes and then slowly exhaled. The plan was for you to stay with your family until you entered the Royal Academy, but you ended up being taken from them all the same. I have turned a blind eye to this hidden room business to help ease your fears and anxieties, but you are now a student. You will be attending all future meetings with scholars at your side, and they will not be so willing to overlook such things. Indeed, I replied. Ferdinand had kept this going for as long as he possibly could, probably at some personal expense. Knowing that, there was nothing more I could say. Most importantly of all, your engagement to Wilfried is due to be announced during the feast celebrating spring. It will be unthinkable for a commoner man to enter the hidden room of an engaged woman. Such a controversy would even damage the planting company's reputation, and you certainly would not want that, would you? I shook my head. Benno had desperately expanded his store to accommodate the unreasonable demands of the nobles. Plus, he was running all across Ehrenfest with Lutz and the other Gutenbergs. I couldn't undo all their efforts for my own selfish reasons. Justice is going to accompany you into your hidden room today, Ferdinand said. He knows of your circumstances and simply already has connections with the planting company. You will find his presence much easier to ignore than mine, I imagine. I apparently had to bring at least one scholar with me. This was because we would be talking about things that needed to be mentioned at the upcoming meeting with the scholars, but it was also presumably his job to make sure I said my farewells for real. Otherwise, there wouldn't actually be a reason for me to bring him into my hidden room in particular. Very well, I said after a reluctant pause. I shall bring Justice. And so I moved to the orphanage director's chambers with Justice and my attendants to await fourth bell. We were going to be talking leisurely over lunch. It was Ferdinand who chose this meeting time, right? I asked Justice. Isn't fourth bell a strange time for a meeting? Lord Ferdinand calculated that it would give you marginally more time than a standard meeting. His kindness is roundabout and hard to understand. Surely you are used to that by now. He is roundabout and hard to understand in general, Justice said with a small smile. Oh, Justice gets it. The attendants assigned to Ferdinand after his baptism had all been Veronica's men. They had taken away from him anything that made him happy and forced upon him anything that he didn't like. As a means to protect himself, he had learned at a young age to develop a flat expression that hid his emotions from those around him. Understandable. From his perspective, milady, you were a very simple you were a very easy to understand individual with clear emotions and no ulterior motives. On top of that, he recognizes that any noble euphemism will only go over your head and result in problems at a later date. So he has adopted a rather easy-to-understand attitude around you in turn. If that attitude is meant to be easy to understand, what the heck does that say about me? I pursed my lips, at which point the planting company arrived. Fran brought them up to the second floor, and Nicola brought in food while we greeted each other. Mark, Lutz, you may eat with us today. My attendants will serve you, I said. Gil glanced uneasily between Justice and me as he started serving Lutz. Please be at ease. It is an invitation from Lady Rosemine, he said. Lutz snapped back to reality and then gracefully took the seat offered to him. I was told that he had learned etiquette at the temple over the 2 years I was asleep, and it certainly appeared to have paid off. He really had mastered it. A Lutz of a bygone age who had stuffed his face with food when Benno had first invited us to lunch was nowhere to be seen. That's good, he's gotten better. On a similar note, Gil, who was pretty much an adult now, was a perfect attendant. It was hard to believe that he had been the biggest brat and a regular of the repentance chamber when he was a kid. Yeah, things have changed a lot since you took him in. He did his job so well that it was hard to imagine him getting punished for tossing his duties aside. I had been so busy since waking up that I hadn't had any time to actually take in my surroundings. Now that I was really looking at them, they had grown up so much. They would no doubt accept the news that we were going to be separated with the utmost calm without getting all weepy and overly attached like I was. It made me feel as though I were a child throwing a tantrum by comparison. The sales were adequate, Benno began as we ate our appetizers. Most books were sold in the castle, but as the head of the printing guild and the planting company, he still handled all the numbers himself. Since the recipe collection sold well, might I suggest our next work be a new recipe collection with contributions from Ella, Hugo, and Lace? If we paid them a small percentage of the money we make in return for their input, we might get even more recipes to use. Perhaps, but sales all across Ehrenfest are gradually on the decline. This is likely due to us having reached our entire sales base. But either way, not that many people could afford books, and so it seemed the planting company was looking to expand into new demographics. But that would require the Archduke's permission. As I sipped my consomme, I mentally started picking out which books I wanted to spread. I want to maintain our advantage in the Royal Academy, so the Bible picture books and the yet-to-be-made textbooks will not yet be sold to other duchies. We will, however, think about starting to sell the other books, that is, the night stories and the sheet music. Considering the chaos that will ensue from the increased number of duchies doing trade here, we will presumably need to wait until next year for that to begin. We will not be able to handle the demand unless we create more printing workshops before then. So you would do well to plan on building more and printing more textbooks this year. Benno gave an empathetic nod and frowned at the word chaos. There was no denying that the lower city had been struggling to prepare for a while now. Furthermore, it seems that the books regarding etiquette are not selling particularly well, I said. Thule had been the one to suggest that we make them, but there simply hadn't been much interest. It saddened me a little to see all the unsold stacks. Lutz, however, shook his head while picking up some fluffy bread. Oh, those are for a different demographic. We're selling them to lay nobles and who cannot afford good tutors. Rich families with connections to the nobility, and town chefs and mayors who deal with nobles. They aren't selling poorly in the least, he explained. As it turned out, they were actually selling rather well. They simply weren't needed by those in the castle since everyone has already understood etiquette. We sold them on the way to Haldensdale by stopping at towns and cities in the central district, discussing what had happened in Haas, and then warning them that they could suffer the same fate unless they worked on their etiquette. We made a ton of sales after that, Lutz said with a proud grin. I couldn't help but smile. The people had presumably had no choice but to buy the books at that point. Haas was the only city that was used to how Besenwants had once done things, so they couldn't just pass it off as someone else's problem. Judging by the sales in the castle, Haldensdale seems like quite a melting pot for stories deemed acceptable by the nobility, Mark reported. The stories your mother wrote sold more than any other, Lady Rosemine. He was eyeing the thigh meat cooked with wine that was sitting on his plate as he spoke. At the moment, Elvira's romance stories had firmly gripped the hearts of all the duchy's noblewomen. Faction politics were no doubt at play to some degree, but the more important takeaway was that a noble was better suited at writing stories than other nobles would enjoy. Haldensale is beating us in sales. We want something that feels palpable more in Ehrenfest. Benno said, his tone polite and firm. Most children have the illustrated Bible, Carta, and playing cards by now, but so they weren't likely to make any more purchases going forward. We were planning to appeal to them with textbooks in the long term, but Benno wanted something that would bring more immediate profits. I wonder what we could produce while cutting my meat. What if we were to focus a bit more on stationery, I suggested. What other stationery exists? Perhaps something like a file folder or a binder for organizing paper? We could also create standardized order forms for merchants, especially considering that a great number are soon going to be arriving from other duchies. They would be convenient to have, don't you think? Mark nodded in agreement several times as I explained how hard it was to process orders, since they were often written in different formats. It was a grand struggle to get people to write them in a consistent way. Speaking of which, the guildmaster had a question. You said there were going to be specific duchies chosen for us to do business with, but how will we determine which merchants have received this permission? Benno asked, looking at me as he stuck a spoon into the pudding served for dessert. They had thus far been able to do business with whatever merchants came to them, but now they were going to need to restrict themselves to a select few. There simply wasn't enough product for them to sell to absolute anyone. That is something we'll have to think about. Did you consult Otto on it for his opinion? His opinion was that he could say no more than the fact things would likely differ based on the duchy. As a former traveling merchant, he wasn't particularly informed on merchants doing business on the orders of their archdukes. Benno replied. If even Otto and Gustav didn't have any ideas on as experienced merchants, then I certainly had no clue either. I suppose it would be wise to investigate how other duchies are handling this, though perhaps the most reliable method will be to make something special in Ehrenfest that other duchies cannot emulate, I mused aloud. The first thing that came to mind were red seal ships, Japanese merchant vessels from the early 17th century that traveled with red sealed letters, patent issued by the ruling Tokugawa shogunate. We could probably copy that system by making it so that only merchants with red sealed letters patent could do business. Although I had no idea whether we could actually issue those or whether they would even work in the first place. It was too dangerous to make this kind of decision by myself. I will consult the Archduke, I said. This is perhaps something that will need to be decided at the Archduke conference. We thank you for your consideration. Food really does taste better when you eat it with other people. Such was the thought that crossed my mind as I finished the last lunch I would ever eat with Lutz and the others. I could have lunch meetings with Benno in the future since he was the head of the planting company, but eating with a Laharl apprentice like Lutz was simply out of the question. It might be possible 10 years from now, but that felt like forever away from where I stood now. Lady Rosemine, here are the documents regarding this year's sales, the thoughts on lay scholars, and the reconstruction of the city. Much appreciated. I will send them to the Ob, I said, and here is a letter from the Ob. Lutz held out the documents as Benno spoke. I took them, and upon confirming that there was a letter slid in between them, swiftly put them into a box and closed the lid. At the same time, Lutz noticed the envelope I slipped into the documents I handed him and glanced at Justice. I wonder if this will be our last time exchanging letters, too. Even after stealing our resolve, the thought still pained my heart. I held back the urge to cry as I ordered Fran to open the hidden room. Benno, Mark, Lutz, there's something very important we must discuss. Daniel is going to accompany me as my guard, Gil and Fran as my attendants, and Justice as my scholar. Lutz's eyes widened in disbelief the very moment I spoke that last name. Mark turned his gaze to the floor while Benno squeezed his eyes shut as if to say, so the day has finally come. He knew. Oh, God, no. This is gonna suck! I looked at the door, Fran had opened, and then gave Lutz the best smile I could muster. It's very, very important. Oh, boy. If I end up crying, guys, I apologize. Sorry I was stretching. I promise. I went inside with everyone else following behind me. I sat in the chair that Gil pulled out for me. Then, once Fran had shut the door, I calmly looked over everyone. Daniel stood behind me, Fran stood by the door, and Gil stood to my right in the standard attendant position. They were all in their usual spots, but the three from the planting company looked awkwardly between Justice and me, unaware of where to go. Benno, Mark, let's. It's fine. Justice is here, but he knows everything. You can sit and act as you normally do. What? Les exclaimed. He looked at Justice, who in turn looked down at him with an amused cocked smile. Amused cocked eyebrow. Oh dear. I'm the one who sussed mine out way back when at Lord Ferdinand's order. That's why he trusted me with the planting company and the workshop for the past 2 years. To be clear, I'm here at Lord Ferdinand's orders too. Let's grimaced at that. He took a seat in front of me and then gave me a worried look. Lady Rosemine, what did the High Priest say? Let's please speak normally. Normally? He looked around the room, then he sighed and shut his eyes tight. It took him a moment, but his green eyes eventually looked straight at me. Alrighty then. What happened? I was relieved to hear his familiar tone, but at the same time, I was struck with a sense of unstoppable desolation. Oh, here we go. Dang it, I said that right at the same time. Here we go for both Rosemine and me. My eyes started to feel uncomfortably warm. Yeah, I told you guys. I knew it was coming. And this fucking sucks. That she can't even hug Les anymore. Dang it, I can't even, hold on guys. I'm gonna have to edit this anyway. So, yeah. Don't you hate it when you get freaking stopped up like that? I hate it. And through the blur of tears, I saw Lutz and Benno reaching for me. I clenched my fists on my lap. Today's the last day we can use the hidden room, so he told me to say my goodbyes. I said, choking the words out between deep breaths. Tears were streaming down my face. I mean, Benno and Mark already knew this was coming. I wonder if they told Lutz this? Because, I mean, they knew it was coming, but shouldn't they have informed Lutz on this so he could have tried to prepare himself for when this would happen? I don't know. Maybe we'll find out. Maybe he did. I don't know. I heard Benno grunt as I watched the beads dripping down into my hands. Figures. Putting aside how you look and all that, you're 10 years old as far as the public's concerned. We knew you wouldn't be able to use the room like this for much longer. Noble society's too strict for that, he said with a bitter expression. Yeah, I still don't get why hand-holding is probably the most lewd thing you can do besides, obviously sex. It's so weird to me. I'm sorry, it's just so weird. Oh, he didn't know. Lutz's eyes widened with surprise. He was the only one of the trio who hadn't expected this to be our last farewell. Why didn't you guys tell him? That should have been something you should have prepared him for. When you were talking to him back after the blizzard, after your blizzard meeting, when, Lutz was getting upset, that's when you should have told him. Benno and Mark had both known it was going to eventually come. Age is one factor, but you also show favoritism to only a select few members, Mark said to me. Sorry. His tone was peaceful, but his smile was tinged with concern. There are already many merchants saying that you have too much of an attachment to the Plantain and Gilberta companies. If rumors spread that you have been taking commoner men into your hidden room, all of us will suffer greatly, and she knows this. The impact would be even more severe if people came to assume that all of the Plantain company's success was due to my favoritism. According to Benno, it would impact his workers' motivation, and the last thing I wanted to do was damage his business reputation, considering that's all he built. He built it all up. Your help. Hello? Yeah, I guess a saint can't be the center of a talk like that, Lutz said. Not just that, I noted. The engagement is about to be announced. Lutz blinked at me completely stunned. Whose engagement, he asked, his brow contorted in bemusement. Oh, yeah, this. Oh, dear. This is gonna be awkward. But, yeah, oh, dear. His Derek Gunter's gonna go crazy! He's gonna get so mad. He's gonna be so mad. Who's marrying my daughter? Oh my god, that's gonna be good to read. But he can't say that out loud, obviously. Well, he can say it at his home, but he can't say it, out in public. Because as far as everybody else knows, mine is dead. Mine. The announcement that I'm getting engaged to my brother Wilfrid, the son of the Archduke. Naturally, this surprised everybody. Both Benno and Mark looked wholly taken aback, while Lutz stared at me quizzically as though he couldn't quite accept the idea of me getting engaged. Oh, wait, you're engaged? Isn't it kind of early for that? Uh-huh, a lot happens in the Royal Academy. The engagement is necessary to stop bigger problems from happening. You sure do cause trouble wherever you go, huh? Lutz said with an exasperated look. He then grimaced with worry. Guess there aren't problems. These aren't problems I can't help you with anymore. Nope, you can't. Oh, come on, just let him hug you one last time. One last hug. Although I think you're going to have a hard time pulling her away from him at that point. No, actually, what am I saying? She's weak. Justice could do it. Though I think he would feel bad doing it. His conflicted smile made my heart ache. I wanted to hug him tightly like usual, but I couldn't find the strength to reach out to him. I just opened and closed my fists on my lap, staring at the creases that were forming on my skirt. It was like there was a wall between us, or a vast chasm that I was only now noticing. Perhaps I had always known it was there, but I had simply ignored it. And now I was being made to face it head on. It really was hard to put what I was feeling into words. The High Priest said it would sound terrible for an engaged noble girl to invite commoner men into her hidden room. Yeah. Considering what happened with Sister Margaret, that's a little different, but still. I said, I mean, that sounds terrible regardless of you being a noble. Let's shut back immediately. I see your head still isn't screwed too tight. I pursed my lips, which made Lutz scratch his head just as Benno always did. He had clearly picked up the habit from him. Well, I mean, the guys are working with him, so of course he's going to pick up some habits from him. Alright. I get that we can't see each other here anymore, Lutz said, but are you fine with that? Really? Obviously not, I replied, tears dripping down my face as my true feelings started to spill out. Of course she's not fine with it. Do you really think she'd be fine with it? No! Having to nullify the contracts. And now this? She's essentially losing her real connection to Lutz and the others. Even more so now because she can't even act like her usual self around them. She has no way of acting like her usual self now with anybody except when there's no scholars around, but even still. I hadn't been fine with it before, and nothing had changed. You've accepted the real me, helped me make paper and hairpins while watching out for my health, and helped me figure out our next step whenever we hit a wall. You were there for me when I was so lonely and worried that I thought I might die, and you brought letters to my family when I got separated from them. Everything I've done has been possible because of you. I never would have been able to do it all alone. I mean, you've also helped him out, too, with getting him to be a merchant and everything. So yeah, he owes a lot to you, too. Look, if you're not okay with this, Lutz began, but I raised a hand to stop him. She needs to say this. It doesn't matter how I feel. It's too late. The High Priest had planned to stop overlooking all this once I started attending the Royal Academy. He allowed it to continue for a bit longer when my 2-year sleep caused me to almost lose my mind with fear. But this farewell should have happened a long time ago. Even though she doesn't want it, obviously. Lutz wore a pained grimace while Benno and Mark averted their gazes, staring at the floor. I understand why we can't stay together more than anyone, but I don't understand it. But I don't understand it either, I continued. Why did I need to sleep for 2 whole years? Why wasn't that enough time for me to become fully healthy? Why do we have to say goodbye already? I say it's because I'm too old now, but to me, nothing's changed. Oh my god, this is gonna make people cry when this gets animated. Oh my god. It's already making me cry. Lutz reached out to console me, but then stopped short. Instead, he gripped my hand in a tight fist. Don't cry. Kinda too late on that, dude. She's already crying. His voice came out low, almost like a growl. I looked up to see that he was now on his feet, staring down at me, his teeth gritted in frustration. Don't cry anymore. Ooh, you called her mine. What am I saying? Of course he's allowed to do that because that could be seen as a nickname to Rosemind. But still. Gotta be careful with that. I was so shocked to hear Lutz yell at me and call me mine that my tears stopped in an instant. Wow. From this point on, no matter how much you cry, I won't be there to calm you down, so just don't cry anymore, he continued. It's kind of hard to hold back your emotions. Because if you hold your emotions in too much, you're gonna go boom boom. And it's not gonna be good for anybody. He continued. His face made it clear that he was desperately holding back the pain. While his voice told me he was agonizing over his own powerlessness. Let's sat back down and silence fell over the room. Justice was quietly watching me. His eyes were just like Ferdinand's, the eyes of someone evaluating another for their worth. I very nearly averted my gaze out of weakness, but Lutz called out to me at the same time, drawing my attention to him rather than the floor. Mine, do you remember talking about our dreams on the way to the forest way back when? Sorry, this is gonna be annoying. I don't know if I'm gonna edit this stuff out. Or I've had to pause. But maybe, maybe not. I don't know. It just depends. I recalled the time I had breathlessly walked to the forest with a tiny basket on my back, eager to forage firewood and food. Let's had set my pace. Tuli was there leading the children, and even Ralph and Faye were accompanying us. All the kids went to the forest in one large group, but I was so slow that I would always leave first and arrive last. Dang, you are slow. I wonder how slow she is. I vaguely remembered us discussing our dreams back when I had been desperate just to make some clay tablets. What the fuck? At the time, we hadn't known anything about city citizenship, the lives of traveling merchants, or what people thought about it, but with that ignorance came a sense of freedom and fearlessness. You said you wanted to be a traveling merchant, right? A gentle smile touched my lips as I thought back on that memory, but let's return to nod with a look of complete seriousness. Right, I wanted to become a traveling merchant to lead this city, to explore other cities. And thanks to you, that dream came true. I'm leaving this city all the time as a Gutenberg. I'm gone to Haas, to Ilgner, and most recently to Haldensdale. Haldensdale was a long trip, even by carriage. So we stopped at all kinds of cities and towns on the way. I've been to so many places, and I'm gonna go to so many more, because we've got to make more printing workshops. Let's begin to list all the other cities and towns he had visited. Looking directly at me with his green eyes, then he eventually said, do you remember what your dream was? If I remember correctly, her dream was to open a bookstore and fill the world with books or something like that? I blinked and scoured my memories. I hadn't had any paper or ink at the time, so my aim had simply been some kind of way of recording letters. I was small, weak, lacking in stamina, and essentially broke, yet I wanted things to read so badly. I wanted to live surrounded by books. My dream was for there to be several new books published each month and for me to live a life where I could read them all. Right. Compared to back then, I'm really, really blessed right now. I had made paper, ink, a printing press, and a foundation through which the Archduke could direct the growth of the printing industry. There were people helping me make books, and I had even befriended a fellow bookworm in the Royal Academy. There were book rooms in both the temple and the castle, which I could enter at will and freely browse thanks to my current status. Only now did it occur to me that I had obtained everything I could ever wanted back then. You did. I looked at my hands and then back at Lutz, who nodded at me in understanding. There are still only a few more books being written each year in Ehrenfest. A few new books being written each year in Ehrenfest, he said. But if we keep building printing workshops, we'll be able to manage a new book each month. Hopefully even more than that. There was now a printing workshop in Haldensdale, as well as Ehrenfest, and there were several other Giebs who wanted to start printing in their provinces too. If the Gutenbergs continued to move around the duchy and spread their knowledge, the number of printing workshops would dramatically increase moving forward. These were concrete steps toward my dream of there being more books, more concrete than anything else we could do. I'll keep making them, Lutz said. I'll keep making more and more books for you to read. Why are you willing to do so much for me? I asked. Oh. I'm willing to bet part of the reason is that he's in love with her. But it's not gonna happen! Well, for one, she's already engaged. Two, it's because of the whole mana thing. Since she's got mana, they couldn't be together. No sooner had the words left my mouth than it struck me that I had asked him a similar question in the past. Let's smile a little as if to say the answer was obvious. 'Cause you made my dream come true, and now I want to return the favor. I'll make a ton of books for you and send them your way, so don't cry. You just need to smile and wait for them to arrive. That didn't make me happy so much as it made me feel like it was a bit wrong. Lutz had been working with me this whole time, and now he was telling me to wait. I was truly happy about getting more books without having to do anything, but I didn't really want Lutz of all people saying that. I thought about why that was, my brows furrowed, and then the realization hit me. I really need to shape up, don't I? Huh? Of course it didn't feel right. We had gotten this far together. Our jobs had always been different, but for sure, whether we were making hairpins and paper, saving for the orphans in the temple, or selling books in the castle, we were doing different things in different places, but I had never just sat and waited for him to do everything. Yeah, you don't just sit, you do what you want, you do what you can to help make things. Sorry. I had to make sure it was still recording because I accidentally hit a button. You make the things I think up, Lutz. I can't just sit around and wait for you to toss things my way. I need to do what I can do myself. For me to waste so much time and potential, well, I wouldn't have the right to read your books. Lutz grinned while Benno's dark red eyes flashed with a light that spoke louder than words. Yep, that's exactly right. If you got time to cry, then you've got time to work. Make money instead. Make a profit. Yep. That's so a thing Benno would say. I'll support you and the other Gutenbergs so that you can do your jobs well and make as many books as possible, I said, and just like I promised my dad, I'll protect this city and everyone in it. Indeed, Mark said encouragingly, the planting company and Gutenbergs will continue to be involved with the nobility into perpetuity. The only one who can protect us weak commoners is you, the Archduke's adopted daughter. I nodded, at which point Lutz abruptly rose from his chair and stood in front of me. Then he held out a hand. It's a promise. Even if we can't meet each other like this anymore, I'll be busy making books for you, and this promise lasts forever. Until he dies anyway, but still, that's a long time away. I stood up and took Lutz's hand, making sure to grip it as tightly as I put my all into my own declaration. Even if we can't meet each other like this anymore, I'll keep thinking of ways to help all of you. That's my promise to you. We grinned at each other hand in hand. Even when separated, we can continue walking down the same path, the path of making books. Lutz, keep your promise, alright? You too, Lutz. Or later. Sorry, later. Keep your promise. Once our promises had been exchanged, Lutz and the others exited my hidden room. Gil would be seeing them off to the gates, as I watched them leave the hidden room with puffy eyes. Justice. Yes, milady? Am I smiling right now? Do you think Lutz left without worrying about me? I don't know. Justice quietly nodded. You are smiling, however, if I may make a suggestion. There is still time before we must return to the castle. Why not make use of your hidden room? Adult noble women who must not allow their emotions to be shown use their hidden rooms to be alone and recover, he said. So essentially stay in there and cry your heart out. In addition, he suggested that I use the hidden room in the High Bishop's chambers. My attendants couldn't do their jobs while I was in this one. That is true, but Ferdinand's also registered to come into that room too, so you might want to be careful that he doesn't accidentally try to walk in. What am I saying? He wouldn't try to walk in on you. He would still, do the proper thing and knock and tell you that he's there. But yeah. A hidden room should be to you as your family and the lower city merchants have been before now, he continued. The comparison immediately made sense to me. My hidden room was like my lower city family, and that it provided me an opportunity to reveal my true self. So essentially you could still be your true self, just in the hidden room. I see, I said. So my family was like a hidden room with a door that can no longer be opened, while Lutz and the merchants were like bedding with a canopy that can only be closed, or that could once be closed, but perhaps a blanket that would give me the energy I needed to work another day. Now that they are gone, however, I must find someplace else to rest. Following that conclusion, I gave an empty smile. Perhaps I would need to grow strong enough to sleep outside like a knight. You are a silly girl. After I exited my hidden room, Fran stepped forward with a slight frown and placed a veil over my head. It blocked my face so that other people wouldn't be able to see my puffy eyes or flushed tear-stained cheeks. I cannot talk! Dear God! As a sign of relief, Fran said, "Excuse me," and picked me up. "Monica, Nicola, I entrust the cleanup to you both. I will be taking the tired Lady Rosemine back to the High Bishop's chambers," he said before briskly walking off. I very nearly protested I could walk on my own, but instead I conceded and rested my head against Fran. This was his way of offering me comfort and physical affection without overstepping the boundaries that sat between a servant and the one they served. He's as hard to understand as Ferdinand, just like always. Yeah, well, I mean, the guy did serve him, so I guess he's going to pick up some habits from him, too. Daniel and Angelica were following me as guard knights while Justice was walking beside us. Right after we arrived at the High Bishop's chambers, I was set down by the door to my hidden room. "Milady, I will summon you when it is time to return to the castle. Please do use your hidden room in the meantime," Justice said. "This box contains something you want, correct?" He handed over the box he had brought for me while implying that he knew about the letter from my family that was wedged between the documents. "Thank you ever so much, Justice. The guy is known to notice everything, so of course he's going to notice it." Once inside my hidden room, I took the letter out of the box. It was a reply to the message I had given the Plantain Company during the castle's book fair. A message in which I had described Tully's hairpin receiving the prince's favor and my coming first in class at the Royal Academy. Everyone had read the letter and they showered me with praise. "You certainly are working hard, mine. That really must have been very difficult. Take care not to fall sick. That's what I'm worried about the most." "Ooh, Tully got praised by the prince and you got better grades than all the other nobles. Both my daughters are something else. I couldn't be more proud as a father. There are more craftspeople making hairpins, but I'm working hard so I can get to keep making all the ones for you, mine. I don't want anyone else taking this job from me." Just opening the letter had made me want to cry. Okay, so she's in her hidden room so she can cry. Good. So she has a place she can actually let out her emotions. Good. So I was positively bawling by the time I actually started to read it. Once the scholars started following me about everywhere, we wouldn't be able to have secret exchanges like this anymore. "Dad, Mom, Tully. I could no longer enter my hidden room now that my magic contract with Sylvester had effectively locked the door. Benno, Mara, Klutz. I no longer had a support blanket to wrap around myself and vent my emotions into. I'll keep my promise, but it looks like I won't be able to stop crying. Let's see. Okay, when is the epilogue? Good lord. How much longer till the epilogue? Jesus Christ. I could still go. I could keep going. Okay. I think I should be fine. Ferdinand and I. As I was enjoying the relaxing nothingness of sleep, I heard the faint sound of someone calling for me. I didn't want to wake up yet. I wanted to keep sinking into the calming void. But the voice simply refused to stop. "Rosamund, get up." Once the gentle shaking started, I had no choice but to slowly open my eyes. My eyelids were puffy and heavy, and despite, perhaps due to how much I had cried, there was a throbbing and an uncomfortable fever in my temples. "Ferdinand, Justice, Eckert?" I said, speaking the names of everyone who was here to my surprise. I glanced around and then remembered I was in my hidden room. I had presumably cried myself to sleep after reading the letter from my lower city family. Wow! And since only Ferdinand could come in the room, when they realized that she was still in there and not coming out, they had to go get Ferdinand. I looked at Ferdinand and the two people behind him, then I lethargically lifted my head up off my desk. Perhaps because I had fallen asleep in such a weird position, my body ached all over and my joints all felt uncomfortably stiff. Ow, ow, ow. "Good grief, you look terrible," Ferdinand said with the knitted brows the moment I got up. "Wretched is the only word that accurately describes your current state." I pursed my lips. That's a very cruel thing to say to a girl, but it is the truth. "Congratulations, you somehow made it even more cruel. Your face is not only swollen from when you were crying, but it's also covered in ink from where you fell asleep on that letter. It is so bad that I can actually read the character on your face." That is bad! That is very bad! Ferdinand said, pointing at my cheek. I touched my face, then looked down at my hand and shrieked, "No, the writing's all smudged now!" "Forget about the letter you have already read and do something about your disastrous face. I care more about the letter than my face." My tears had caused the ink to run such that the letter was hardly in a readable state. Ferdinand, is there any incredible magic that can fix this letter? I asked as I cradled my head. I do know of a magic tool that can completely strip away ink. That would ruin it! Yeah, indeed it did. Indeed it would, he said with an expressionless nod, a sight that caused Justice to clap a hand over his mouth as he tried to hold back his laughter. Still looking down at me, Ferdinand then let out a sigh. You are doing better than I thought you would, at least. Wow. Really? What did you think she was going to do? Explode? Fran had apparently activated the light magic tool to indicate that I should prepare to leave, but I hadn't noticed it at all. He had then contacted Ferdinand, worried that I had collapsed, and together they had come to check up on me. It was quite surprising to enter the room and see you collapsed unconsciously atop the desk, milady. We were enormously relieved when we realized you were just asleep, Justice said. Then after a pause, he added, Ferdinand that is... Ferdinand, so he was worried. He was worried about you. Yes, Ferdinand does care about her. A lot. Do you really think that he would put as much effort into something that he didn't care about? No, he wouldn't. He would just write it off as something not worthy of his time and just leave. But no, he's gone through all this to protect her, to help her, to ease her suffering. Ferdinand glared at Justice, told him to keep such comments to himself, and then looked at me. Do not read into that. I simply recalled the incident in the repentance chamber. Lord Ferdinand, what is this repentance chamber incident you refer to? Did something happen? Justice asked. His eyes were shining with curiosity, but Ferdinand shut him down, and then touched a hand on my forehead and Snape. You would have to ask Fran about that one, Justice. Or, actually, you could ask Rosemine about it. She'd probably tell you. But not while Ferdinand's there. You do not have a fever, your pulse is normal, and it seems your mana has stabilized as well, he observed. I may be healthy, but I'm not feeling well at all. In fact, I feel really cruddy. But I have a goal in mind, so I'm okay. I can work hard for as long as I focus on that. I'll do all I can to build and stock my own library, I declared, earning a blatant grimace from Ferdinand. You do not appear particularly depressed to me, but very well, I suppose. We could start by making your face bearable to look at. Please do something about your cruel choice of words, Ferdinand. You know too many insults, I complained, turning to face him just as he pointed his stab at me. Hold your breath. I cocked my head in confusion, only for an orb of water to appear out of nowhere and crash into my face. What the fuck am I supposed to say to that? By the time I realized he was using the cleansing magic he had used to clean Dad's cape at Haas's monastery, I was already drowning in the orb, which then promptly disappeared. I had unintentionally breathed some in, but that too was gone, leaving only the sensation of water having rushed through my nose. I started to sputter. Ugh, my nose hurts. Fool, why did you not hold your breath? Ferdinand explained. You didn't give her a chance to! It was like he told her, hold your breath, and then boom, water all over you. Dude, give her a chance to react. I personally blamed his poorly worded warning. Had he said, hold your breath because I'm going to use cleansing magic, then I would have happily complied. I glared at Ferdinand while Justice patted me on the back. You never explained yourself well enough, I said pointedly. Ferdinand gave a dismissive scoff and then told me to close my eyes, which since he was going to be casting healing magic. Thank you! I did as instructed, thankful that he had at least this time given me proper explanation, and then felt his hand rest against my eyelids. May Hailshmar's healing be granted, he muttered. A gentle green light filled my vision, and the feeling of my eyes being puffy almost immediately vanished. I thank you ever so much, Ferdinand. Now you are more bearable to look at. You truly are a handful, he said with a bored voice, at which point his gaze stopped on the letter in my hand. His eyes narrowed slightly, and I could tell that he was staring at it. As I wondered why, he suddenly extended a hand. Is he going to confiscate it? I frantically hid the letter behind my back. A second later, Ferdinand rested a hand on my head and started moving it around as if attempting to twist my head. Very good, he said, while shaking me from side to side, hard enough that my eyes started to spin. Hold on, what's going on here? I cried, blinking as the world spun around me. Excuse me? I simply recalled that I had not yet praised you, Ferdinand said, but this was his interpretation of praise, and I was starting to feel that I would rather never be praised ever again. Dude, you're bad at this! You were a noble, but you cannot do... What was he trying to pat her head and do like, what Benno would do to her or something? Where he would, rub her head and then she'd get annoyed and smack his hand away? I don't know what the fuck he was trying to do there. Did I do something praiseworthy? You came first in class, no? That letter reminded me that I did not praise you despite being your guardian. Did you get praised too when you came first in class, I asked. Oh, we get some insight into his past as a noble, or past at the Royal Academy. Okay. I started to watch a video involving Ferdinand's, life, the timeline for Ferdinand, and I don't know how good the information was, at least on his actual origins. So I'm gonna take that with a grain of salt, but this actually was mentioned in the video. Ferdinand's expression softened suddenly, and he fondly narrowed his eyes as if remembering a precious memory. Never before had I seen him wear such an affectionate expression. It actually made me feel incredibly curious. And speaking of which, he had apologized to me about my having to miss the awards ceremony. Maybe getting first in class was a very important and meritorious event. Ferdinand, who praised you? My father did, Ferdinand replied. After being baptized and brought to the castle, he had been given a room in the northern building. He and his father, the previous Archduke, had only had the opportunity to speak at dinner because they lived in separate locations. Since Veronica had also attended those dinners, however, Ferdinand had eaten in silence to minimize any contact with her. He had spoken only when spoken to, and that lifestyle had continued until he entered the Royal Academy. That sucks. Veronica, you're a bitch. And I think everybody would agree on that one. On the night that Ferdinand was made first in class among the first years, he was summoned to his father's room for the first time. Yeah, because remember, the archducal couple gets rooms in the Royal Academy, but since Veronica's a woman, she wasn't able to enter her husband's room, and thus he was able to actually be able to interact with his father without her around. Dormitories in the academy were segregated by gender, with even the archducal couple having rooms on separate floors, which meant Veronica could not follow him. Well, I mean, Florencia did with whatever. It was their first real father-son time together since Ferdinand had entered the castle. Sylvester had been there too, and together with their father, he praised Ferdinand for having come first in class. He had then spoken all about what had happened in the Royal Academy, and that their father had listened with a peaceful expression. He had never usually made eye contact with Ferdinand, but here he looked right at him and listened to everything he had said. His father sounds awesome. If only we had gotten to meet him. Oh well. And so the three talked as men, with nobody else there to interrupt them. It henceforth became a tradition for them to converse into the night when the archducal couple visited the Royal Academy. All the legends about Ferdinand had resulted from him going all out in the hope of receiving praise from his father during the rare opportunities they had to talk. Aww! I feel so bad for Ferdinand. The poor guy's been through a lot. Sucks for him. Did your father praise you like this during those times, I asked? I wanted to scold Mr. Past Archduke for having been so unnecessarily violent, but Ferdinand casually shook his head. The whole eye-rolling head shake was apparently his own invention, which explained why it had lacked any kindness or gentleness whatsoever. Then, praise me as he praised you, Ferdinand. As my father did, he repeated. Yes? Though, if I remember correctly from this, he doesn't actually call her Rosamund. He just does it like his father did, like he's called him Ferdinand, essentially. So, he doesn't substitute the names. But I mean, she did ask. I held out both arms toward Ferdinand, eager for him to praise me. He sat down in the chair I had been sitting on, wrapped his arms around me, and then pulled me into a hug. I opened my eyes wide in surprise, having not expected a show of affection like that from a noble father and son. Ignoring my yelp of surprise, Ferdinand spoke in a kind voice that I had never heard from him before. Good job, Ferdinand. Ehrenfest could not ask for a better Archduke candidate. You are my pride and joy. Aww! Good God, Veronica, why'd you ruin it? Why'd you ruin all this? I understood that your father was a kind person, but could you at least replace your name with mine, I asked, puffing out my cheeks as I demanded a redo. It didn't feel like he was praising me at all. He did! He actually did it! He repeated it, and he replaced his name. Good job, Rosamund. Ehrenfest cannot ask for a better Archduke candidate. Oh my God! You are my pride and joy! Oh my God, considering what I think I know about the end, that comes off as so weird. I'm sorry, but it does. Ferdinand said it was actual praise this time, but it was spoken almost entirely in a monotone, maybe due to the memory filter having been turned off. Did he not realize how much it had dampened the words? I would appreciate a bit of emotion being put into it. That was more than enough, Ferdinand scoffed. He then pushed me away from him in an unbelievably rough manner. Something I was certain he hadn't learned from his father. He was being a tad crueler to me than a guardian should, if you ask me. But he probably really isn't used to praising other people. After puffing with anger, I let out a sigh. I had known that Ferdinand was clumsy when it comes to relationships, and that he didn't have much of a connection with his family or anyone else, but this was even worse than I thought. He had only gotten a few days with his father over the span of a year. I hadn't really praised other people much back in the Irano days, but spending time in the lower city had taken away all my resistance toward praising others and commending all their good points. Maybe Ferdinand needed that kind of education himself? Mainly so that he would start praising me more. Ferdinand, I'll put my all into it too. So be sure to praise me like this a few times a year. If you come first in class, then certainly. Wait, hang on a second. That's kind of a tall order. It seems as though my request had become an impossible dream. Perhaps it was best for me to give up on earning any praise from Ferdinand. Now that I had no connection to the lower city, I was walking down a thorny path into a barren wasteland devoid of any human warmth. Or at least, that was how it felt. Finally, the epilogue! Okay, I'm gonna end this part off here, and the next part will be the epilogue and the rest of any side stories. So I will see you all in the next one.